So, one thing that we had talked about earlier this week is the idea of willing things into existence. That was
Mm,
something where you're like, Let's talk about that in the next podcast." The universe is conspiring against you, right? To make this impossible. You think you've got it perfect and it will just keep hitting you in ways that you didn't expect. But if you just keep at it, eventually the universe gives up and you win. And now this thing that you had imagined is part of the universe. And
right.
like it's I mean we like to talk in abstract about these things, but I think everybody else likes to hear concrete examples um,
hmm
to kind of understand the abstract as well.
Right, right. Well, that first came into that phrase was something I used on the spot. It just I was before the Math Academy school program existed in the Pasadena Unified School District, and we're talking, geez, the original group of kids that I was working with, they were in fifth grade. They're now seniors in high school. Okay, and I was trying to figure out how to expand this program, this no I'm sorry, this accelerated pull-up math class that I had just sort of been able to get going again, but sort of a force of will with the and of course with the cooperation of the school, but it was really something that I made happen. um, and I was speaking with uh, there's a guy who would run all the sort of like, he was running like the robotics program for the school district, and he was in charge of sort of like the gifted education enrichment things that were happening. And he was a guy at Caltech, really bright guy. And so I had kind of connected with him and said, here, I'm doing this sort of crazy thing where I have these kids in fifth grade and they're doing algebra and trigonometry and all this stuff. And he's like, really? I said, yeah. And so I was trying to get some help from him or some guidance from him, like how do we make this a district program? Because he had sort of created, he was hired, I mean, he was a employee of the district, but he had created this robotics program in all of the middle schools, and then that fed into this thing called App Academy at one of the high schools, where there's this kind of a 4-year programming thing. And so he says, I want to introduce you to the basically the patron of the robotics program, because the school district doesn't have the funds for this. He's a really successful tech entrepreneur, and he has, you know, generously funded this thing. And so he set up a lunch between the three of us, and the entrepreneur, who has since become a friend of mine, but I'm just going to keep his name out of this because he's kind of a low profile guy, and so he's sitting there quietly listening to the other guy and I talking about what I want to do. There's what I've been doing with these kids, and what my thought of like, hey, these kids can do algebra and trigonometry in middle school, and we could, make this should be in all the schools, and all this sort of stuff. And he sits there and he just goes, and I think there was some back and forth about what it might look like and how it would work and all this sort of stuff. But then he goes, what makes you think you can make this happen? And I said, because I'm going to will it into existence. And he just looked at me. He was just like, huh. And years later, he said, when you said that, I had sort of two thoughts. It's like, either this guy is kind of crazy or he is the real deal. Like, this is going to be interesting to see what happens here. And and what I meant by that is not that I'm going to manifest it, or some woo bullshit. It means that I'm going to use sheer force of will to bring this thing into existence. This thing does not exist, but I'm going to make it exist, because whatever obstacles are in the way, I'm going to find a way around them, over them, through them, whatever it takes. It might be problem solving, it might be creative marketing, it might be building, an army of allies, whatever it takes. And I think anytime you want to do something that's outside the system, that doesn't already have sort of a infrastructure and a thing in place, it really comes down to a force of will. Because whatever idea you have, like, oh, this is going to be this cool new thing, and here's all the benefits, and that may be true, but there are going to be so many obstacles and frankly, people that are going to try and slow you down, stop you, right? They're going to try to derail you.
Yeah, because
And
systems
it's
don't like new things, right? It's kind of part of what they are. They try to just maintain a state of homeostasis. And if you want to get something integrated in, you have to almost make it easier for them to just accept that it's going to be integrated. Like it's just easier to accept it than fight it, because you just you're
that's
unstoppable.
right.
What's that?
That's right.
Unstoppable force versus immovable object.
Right. And usually, okay, so a couple things. It's almost like the human body. The human body it attempts to create sort of a homeostasis, like keeps everything the same. So whenever you want to change it, you want to say, we've used this analogy a lot, but use this, but you want to say, get in better shape. You want to become more muscular or something. Well, guess what? Your body's going to resist that. So you have to work hard to change your body, right? You have to go and lift heavy weights consistently, over a period of time, and your body will change. It will fight that, or you lose weight, or whatever you're trying to do. It involves effort, intention, and consistency to do it. And you have to be perfect, but you constantly have to be hammering away, with intention. And the world is like that in a way too. There are all these sort of moving parts and these systems and these vested interests, and people are just, they found a place in this world, right? This is my job, or this is my department, or this is my thing that I do, and they don't really want it to change typically. If they do want to change just some little thing just to make their life easier, it's not some other person or other thing coming out to say, we're going to change this. There are people like, what, why, how is this going to screw up my life, make things more difficult for me, make me do more work, right? Because in bureaucracies, meaning whether it's a government bureaucracy or a corporation or company or like a school, there are layers of bureaucracy in this thing, right? Even at a middle school, you got, well, it's just not the teacher, it's the middle head of the middle school, it's the assistant principal, it's the principal, it's the resource teacher, it's the counselors. I mean, there's all this bureaucracy, all these people that have opinions and ideas and plans, and this is schedules, and we figured it out. This is what we're doing. This is what the school day is. This is what the year is. And then somebody wants to come in and go, we're going to change stuff. They're just like, what? Right? No, this is right. Because not only does it screw up whatever they already had it in place, which they had, for whatever reason, either they were happy with, or at least had accepted and made peace with. Now you're probably going to make them do more work, or it's going to, or force them to adjust. And people don't want to adjust. They don't want to change, right? Even if you can make a strong argument for that this thing you want to do is going to be an improvement, it's going to help kids or whatever, it's easy for people to rationalize fighting against it or resisting it because it's just people don't want to do more work. And in bureaucracies, it's filled with people, and this is true of anywhere. It's not just a school. You go to any corporation around the planet, and people don't want to change how they're doing stuff unless their boss comes in and says, this is what's happening. And it's not just my opinion, my boss's boss and on top. And then you're like, oh, okay. Right. But even then, employees are undermining and passively resisting, if they can, this extra thing that they have to do, or this new thing, and they grouse about it or fighting, why are we doing this? It's stupid. And I don't know, whatever. If it makes them do more work. Right. So when you have this natural impedance its natural resistance against you, you have to have an incredible amount of will to overcome it, right? Because it's not the so, oh, well, I'll just explain to them how this is going to work, and then they'll be convinced. Like, it's never, ever that, or I'm just going to go meet with the boss and I'll convince them, and then they'll make everybody do it. And it is never even that simple, because you have this resistance from within. People are sandbagging you and sabotaging you behind. You don't realize this sometimes till years later. In my case, I found out later there were people who were actively trying to undermine. Anyway, so you have the humans themselves who are fighting you. It's not even having any direct competitors. I mean, forget if you're doing a free market or something, you're creating a new product or service. You have competitors who see you as a threat, and they're going to attempt to directly undermine you, directly fight you. But even in a situation like I'm describing, where they're not really competitors, it's just people who don't want their lives complicated. And yeah, I can understand it. Like, nobody wants to do extra work. Like, well, I'm not getting paid anymore for this. I get my job salary. This is what I do. This is my job. I think I do a good job at it. And now I have to do this thing or this extra work.
So can you paint a picture? Like, what did this look like concretely in the school system?
Yeah. So what this looked like is, okay, I have a lot of examples. But one other thing I want to say about it is not just people; it's just the complexity of resolving resolving issues. Like when you're writing code, and you're like, oh, I'm going to write these new functions, going to do this thing, and you realize, oh crap, there's these other things it's going to affect, and I got to change. So you have to problem solve around this thing you want to do and how it's going to impact other things, right? It's like, well, someone's not going to be trying to resist you, but they're like, well, Jason, the schedule, this and this and this and this red tape, and you're just like, right, okay, now I gotta think of a solution, right? Okay, so what does this look like in practice? So in my case, it was, I would continually have to get people excited about what I was doing. So at the school level, when this, without going into the complete story, it was just getting the principal, getting the head, I was a resource teacher. She was going to have gifted education, get her really excited, get the people who had some influence or some power, making them aware of what you're doing and getting them excited about it. Right. So you're building support, right? Probably anybody in any corporation say, yeah, right. You got always going to do. You got to build allies and build an army in a way. That can look at getting parents excited, making sure the kids are excited, for instance, make sure the parents are really keeping them constantly sending emails that, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that, look at what we did. And the parents are like, oh, it's really exciting. So you get all this enthusiasm. Talk to the teachers, occasionally run the teachers in the hall and be like, oh, hey, just make sure what we did. And so the teacher's like, oh, that's really cool, right? So you want to make sure you don't feel like you're stepping on their toes. You're just doing this extra thing, right? And you can, if they have any kind of concerns or whatever, you can kind of hear them. You're sort of developing a rapport with them, right? And then when it got beyond the school and it got to the school district, it was, even though we had the superintendent, he was really excited about what we're doing. It was, what you end up doing is just someone in senior leadership might say, well, yeah, I want this to happen, right? Where's the CEO or whatever. Well, then it gets passed down to somebody who's going to be in charge of helping you make this thing happen, right? And that person may or may not be really excited about what you're doing, right? Or even if they're not against it, they got other stuff going on. Like, this is just not a priority. It's like, okay, yeah, well, my boss says all kind of stuff, right? And they will say it to me. It's like, yeah, well, okay, he says this, but he doesn't quite understand that this can't happen for these reasons. So they just kind of blow it off, or just like, oh yeah, okay.
So it's basically, but before you try to really muscle this thing through, it's going to be just force of will. at the end, but you want to make it as easy as possible. Like just try to eliminate all sort of potential resistance, just kind of grease the situation to make things go through as smoothly as possible.
Yes, 100%. I mean, having willing something existent doesn't mean you're like a blunt instrument, right? Because that doesn't work. That just pisses people off, right? And then you get, instead of passive resistance, you get active entry. You create direct enemies, people who hate you, right? You want to avoid creating enemies, right? Because they can do a lot of damage. They may not come to your face and yell at you or something, but they will be sabotaging. They'll be blowing up bridges and stuff in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah, because once somebody hates you, then they just get pleasure out of opposing you, no matter what it is. It's like even if it makes their life easier, like you go from a state from okay, initially people are resistant to new stuff and stuff that makes more work for them, but once if people hate you, even if you're doing something that ultimately makes their life easier, they might resist it just because they hate you, just to oppose you and get satisfaction
Right.
out of that.
So you don't want to offend people, demean people, make them feel bad. You want to try and make it as easy for them possible, and you want to help them get credit for it. Say, hey, let's do this thing, right? This is going to be really cool. Like I'll do the heavy lifting, and so you keep them in the loop. You keep them updated. Hey, just want you to know, I met with this person. I think we can do this. What do you think? You kind of try and pull them along and make them feel as good about it as possible. So there was this one woman who was just amazing, who worked at school, just super bright, and I quickly realized that she was a problem solver. Like she'd be like, because she would say, Jason, like there's X, Y, and Z requirements for Common Core math and accreditation, and different types of red tape, and I'd be like, well, what if we did this? And she'd be like, okay, let me think about it. So she would kind of help me navigate the red tape and bureaucracy by just explaining, like, well, you can't do this for these reasons. And I'd be like, interesting.
So she's kind of like your compiler almost, this bureaucracy compiler. You're trying to like basically write code that compiles on this bureaucracy, and she's giving you all these error messages telling you why this doesn't work or that doesn't work, and you're just cycling through these quick iterations, feedback loops, planning, so you can get some kind of approach that's going to stand up against this monster.
Yeah. She. I one time I jokingly called her the dark side of the moon. Always bad, and she thought that was funny. She liked that. She would tell other people, Jason calls me the dark side of the moon, because it was always like, well, you can't. I'm like, Jesus. She went on to win like administrator for the year in California or something. Like like I said, she's really great. And but you find people who are not just say supporters, allies, or that kind of thing, but somebody who can really help you navigate. Like you need a guide. Like I'm in this dark forest, and I need someone who lives here, can walk me through this, because I'm going to get lost, right? And they're going to like, well, you're someone who's navigating a foreign land. You need a guide, right? She was my guide, right? And not only navigating the red tape and the regulations and state laws and all that kind of stuff, but just navigating the bureaucracy to some degree, right? So, but a lot of it would also take us that I would continually show up. Look, I'd be like, okay, so what's the status? After teaching one of these classes, I just roll on over to the admin building and be like, hey, what's going on? What's the latest with this? What's the latest with that? So it's like they're like, Jesus, like this guy's never going away. He's just never going away. And I would joke around with them, and I was friendly. I mean, I liked them. I wasn't put on. I'm pretty good with people, and I tend to enjoy people, and I like joking around, and so it's easy for me to just
you're trying to build a genuine relationship with them,
a relationship rapport, and I did, and we had, I think we enjoyed talking to each other. But I would continue. I wouldn't just like wait for somebody. I would send an email and wait for somebody to get back to me. I would go and just pop in hey, so what's going on with this? Hey, any progress on this? Oh, by the way, I did that. You know what I mean? And so it's just like we quickly realized that there's resisting Jason and there's cooperating with Jason, and it's going to be a lot more work to resist Jason, right? You want to be resisting you to be the hardest thing that they're going to have to do, right? Not because you're their enemy, but just because they're just kind of like, hey, I like Jason, I like what he's trying to do. It sounds kind of crazy, like it's work, but God, it's just okay, fine, you know. And you just try and make them feel good about it. You're pulling them along on this journey, right? Like Lord of the Rings, you're a hobbit. You got to come on this journey with me, right? They don't want to do it. They're in their hobbit hole, and they're like, fine, and you kind of inspire them, and they're like, all right, it's easier to go on this journey with Gandalf than it is to resist him or something, So you kind of have to, you kind of have to create that dynamic, but it's just you're problem solving, you're communicating, you're continually what's the status, and my one of my oldest and closest friends, Phil, we did our first startup together, and he said his nickname me was Horse. He's like, God, because he's like, you're like a goddamn horse. You're like bucking and rearing, like in the gate and formed like a horse race. And, they're just, he's like, you just got so much. And so like he and I were writing code and stuff, and we'd kind of come to conclude, okay, we're going to build this. I'm like, right. And then like an hour and a half later, I'm like, how's it going? He's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, how's it coming? He's like, Jesus, dude, I'm just trying. I'm like, all right. And then like an hour later, how about now? He's like, God. Like you're horsing me, man. You're like constantly horsing me. How about now? Is it done yet?
This is relatable, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, I harass you all the time.
Well, the thing is, like, it's like I think the key, some key things to point out to listeners right here is, number one, the horsing does not stop when somebody is on your team and is going on this journey with you. The horsing continues, and it's not a horsing in a kind of like, let me annoy you into this sort of way. It's a horsing of like, just keep whatever
pure enthusiasm. It's just enthusiasm, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So you're always driving that enthusiasm, excitement meter all the way to the top. It just naturally maybe comes down from 100% to 80%, and then bam, like you just shove it back up to 100%, and it's great and it's fun, and it really has a positive effect of getting more stuff done. And I mean, when you're on a team and the leader is horsing you, and you end up going further because of that, like everyone's happy. It's like it's really exciting. So yeah, it's a very positive thing.
Well, I'm glad. Well, as I always tell you, like, hey, if I call you and it's because sometimes I'll call you and it's the evening because I'm on West Coast, you're on East Coast, and I'm like walking the dog at like 5:00, which means 8:00 for you, and I'm like, okay, if you guys are eating dinner, like, don't piss Sunjin off by answering the phone, right? Like, I don't want God, Jason's calling again, like, don't. That's fine. You don't have to answer the phone, but if you're just sitting around working, and she's doing other stuff, then yeah, let's I want to hear an update. I'll tell you what's going on. I had some thoughts on some stuff. So yeah, I try and like, I mean, I realize I can be a bit much, right? Like I am fully aware that I am a lot. And, as Sandy always says to me, she's like, I have to take a nap every day because of you.
But yeah, the funny thing is you've got Sanjana on the train now. Whenever I get off the phone with you, she's like, "What'd you guys talk about? What are you doing
really?
now? What's next?" Like,
what's going on? Oh, that's great. I mean, yeah. I don't want to create, like I said, I don't want to create enemies. And I don't want the wives of your directors and key people to be like, damn, Jason, he's just like, they want them to be like on board and excited. So that's good to hear. But yeah, so you just kind of, and I think Phil had actually talked to me about even the Math Academy itself, the whole online thing. He's like, dang, you goddamn horsed this whole thing. You just horsed it. And it's like, yeah, I mean, obviously it wasn't just me, Justin and Alex and Alex, Tammy, and Sandy, and they've done a ton of work. There's no way. I mean, obviously it's way beyond me, but I definitely horsed it. There's no question. So like willing something existence is in both cases, it was that really what that's saying is that I have this goal and nothing is going to stop me. I am going to finish. I'm going to make this happen. And you commit to it and you just drive for it and use problem solving and you push and you're, and that, as I said, I talked to my youngest who's, driving to try and get a Division I scholarship in gymnastics, which is like incredibly difficult thing to achieve because there's like 400 spots a year open up and it's crazy, right? And I would say, look, if you just can every day, you just keep doing what you're doing, you just keep executing and keep improving and you just never give up and you keep pushing, the universe will bend. Okay, the universe will bend. It cannot sustain that kind of continual pressure, the continual effort. The world would just say, all right, fine, fine, right? Just basically like the school district was like, all right, fine, Jason, we'll do this Math Academy thing. Because I remember we went and gave a presentation, a couple years after the whole program got going. It was all the middle schools and the high school. We're getting press, Washington Post and stuff, started writing articles about us. And we gave this presentation to La Cañada School District, which is a wealthy school district nearby, and they tend to do really well. But they weren't doing anything like this mathematically, right? This was just way above anything. Kids doing calculus in 8th grade is just crazy, right, to them. And a lot of the parents were really excited about it. And a lot of these parents worked at JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab, which is because Caltech is right here in Pasadena. Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL is 10 minutes away, right in the center of right in La Cañada. So a lot of people who work at JPL their kids go to the La Cañada School District, right? So they're all like, we're a wealthy school district, JPL parents, Caltech parents, and our kids are just grade level Common Core stuff. And yet at Pasadena, where 2/3 of these students are on free and reduced lunch, are doing calculus in 8th grade. WTF. And they're like, and I had been talking to a couple of parents, one in particular who was just really interested in upgrading what was going on in La Cañada, really super involved parent who worked at JPL. And he's just scheming, like, how do I get this into, he's like, I'm going to set up a meeting and he got all these parents, and then it was like the superintendent and principals and the superintendent principals didn't want to do it, right? They didn't want change, right? They're already doing much better in their math scores than the surrounding school districts, not because they were so great, but everything else is so bad that they looked great in comparison. So they're like, why are we changing anything? So the last thing they need is this outside agitator trying to do this gifted math thing. They don't want to do that, right? And so the administration people showed up kind of mostly to resist this thing. They just like, well, what is this? So Sandy and I stood up and gave this big talk to the parents, explaining like how this thing worked, and it was mostly again like, asking very sort of questions. Obviously, they're trying to find ways to not have to do this, and they don't want to do it, whatever. And I remember sitting around with some of the parents in the parking lot afterwards, and they were just like, how did you guys make this? Because they didn't quite realize the level of resistance that was going to come from the principals and superintendents and chief academic officers who just, they don't believe in gifted education or advanced. They want everyone just to be at grade level, everybody does everything at the same pace. That's what they want to do, right? Philosophically. It also just makes their life easier too, conveniently, right? You'll notice that doing less, making everybody do the same thing, is not only makes them feel good in some ways, but it just makes their life easier, and it makes less work for them, right? Everybody wears a size medium shirt. Now, this is easy. I don't have to measure, oh, well, you're extra small and you're a large and extra large, but you're double X. Oh, gee, we got all these different size shirts and how many have we order of each and who's wearing what size shirt. They don't want to deal with that. Everyone wears a size medium shirt. You're like, wait, my daughter is really small. It's kind of like a dress for her. Just cinch it. That's really a medium. And you're just like, and my son, who's actually big, it doesn't even cover his stomach. They're like, well, it's like air conditioning. Just like think of it as bullshit, right? And you're just like, you're looking like, this is so dumb, But anyway, so this group of parents who are organized, highly educated, PhD, physicists, astronomers, mathematicians, computer scientists, all these problem solvers, connected. A lot of them were done well, tech startups, money. They couldn't make anything like this happen. Couldn't make it happen. And they're like, how in the hell did you and Sandy make this happen? And I was like, well, I didn't say force of will. I was like, at the time, I actually don't quite remember, but they just couldn't understand because parents around the country had always tried to do things like this, and they just get swatted away first or second efforts. They set up a meeting with the board or set up a meeting with whatever, and they just don't do it the right way. And part of it is because they don't have the mentality of a startup founder, which is fundamentally a disruptor, right? Disruptors are pirates, right? They're like, we're not playing by any rules. We're going making this happen no matter what. You're special forces or something. Where everybody else is like regular army. They don't understand this kind of what it takes and the kind of resourcefulness and commitment and just out of the box thinking and just how many times you have to keep hitting on things. Anyway, and of course it never happened, never took hold in La Cañada, and they just kind of got swatted away. And because, I think they just gave up. The parents gave up. They put in some work, but they weren't willing to do everything they needed to. But one other thing I'll say had in my favor. So I'm teaching this. So Sandy would teach the class with me when they're fifth grade, but then she kind of had enough after that. She was on the executive committee of the Pasadena Educational Foundation, which raised millions of dollars for the school district every year from big foundations and corporations and stuff, and put on would create programs. They put on the summer, they had like a summer school programs, like a half a day thing where you take like fun classes, and they did this art program. They reading programs. They put all these special programs, all this money. So the superintendent, the board was just, always trying to keep the Pasadena Educational Foundation happy, right? Well, she's in the executive committee of this thing. So she meets with the superintendent. She's on a first name basis with the superintendent. And so she's like at headquarters, right? I'm out in the field and I'm like, can you like bomb this ending position on the top of this hill? And they're like, she's like, all right, I get it. Like, all right, guys, let's go. You know what I mean? It's like, I had air cover, right? And I can't overstate how important that was. Because if I was just me in the trenches with my guys trying to fight hand-to-hand combat or just sort of jungle warfare, I mean, it's really, really tough, even if you have like this crazy group of special forces or whatever. Like sometimes you need to call in air cover. You need someone who's at headquarters who can get the resources in place to help you out. So anyway, so what does willing something exist means? It means giving everything you got, marshaling all the resources and just refusing to give up, and then just putting continual pressure on something until your goal is achieved. That's what willing it to exist is. It is not lying in bed at night going, trying to manifest it, thinking, I just really want this to happen for me. That's obviously just...
Yeah, completely passive. Willing is like willing as an action, not as a thought, as an act of you going out and doing things.
It's actions all the way down. Actions. Yeah. It's just, and you have to have a ton of energy, and it has to be something you really want, because it's not going to come easy. If it's something you really, really want for whatever reason, because you believe in it, because it's important to you for whatever, but that's what it takes. And I think if you find the people who create big change, create big companies, big whatever, even nonprofit, whatever the thing is, they're a horse, right?